I'm Mark Golub, and as election 2016 moves on in this most unusual primary season, there's still discussion in the Jewish community about Donald Trump's performance at the Aipac Policy Conference last week in Washington. And in case you missed it, controversy began when Donald Trump departed from his prepared text with an aside that summarized the anti-Obama sentiment many Republicans and Democrats have with the president's diplomatic policy vis-a-vis Israel, the Palestinians, and the Muslim world. Here is Donald Trump and his aside, and pay special attention to the reaction of the Aipac audience.
With President Obama in his final year, yay. He may be the worst thing to ever happen to Israel, believe me. Believe me. And you know it better than anybody.
Now that Donald Trump moment and the audience reaction has become the story of the 2016 AIPAC Policy Conference, punctuated by AIPAC leadership feeling it had to rebuke Donald Trump and, perhaps even more so, rebuke those AIPAC members who responded positively to Trump's comments. Here is the new president of AIPAC, Lillian Pincus, reading almost in tears remarks on behalf of the entire AIPAC board.
There are people in our AIPAC family who were deeply hurt last night. And for that, we are deeply sorry. We are disappointed that so many people applauded a sentiment that we neither agree with or condone. Let us take this moment to pledge to each other that in this divisive and tension-filled political season, we will not allow those who wish to divide our movement from the left or from the right to succeed in doing so. Thank you.
Quite a moment at AIPAC. So what's this all say about the primary election process, and more so about where the Jewish community is today? For some answers, we're so pleased to have on our JBS phones once again the publisher and columnist of the Jewish Journal of Greater Los Angeles, David Suissa, who always has something insightful and courageous to say about Jewish life. David, thank you so much for giving us some time on JBS once again.
Nice to be here, Mark.
David, you were there. By the way, were you allowed to be in the room, or were you with all the other press high up in a gallery behind glass? Where were you?
I was in the press high up, but I got a good eyesight, so I was definitely looking at the crowd and trying to feel the energy.
So in general, how did you feel the AIPAC audience responded to Trump in general, and more specifically to his yay comment?
I think it's really important, Mark, to understand the mood, the dynamic of an AIPAC conference.
Please.
Israel is like for many pro-Israel Jews and many Jews in that room, Israel is like a child or a family member that is under assault by the world, that it's under a precarious situation in a very violent Middle East, that the threats to Israel are existential. So there's a real strong sense of, protecting Israel. So when I hear that, people cheered a positive message for Israel, I don't think they were cheering Donald Trump. I think they were cheering his message primarily. That's the mood that you're in. The fact that they cheered criticism of Obama, I don't understand why that should offend so many people. Obama is under tremendous criticism, especially because of the Iran deal. So I didn't really share that sentiment. I wasn't hurt by the crowd's reaction. Mm-hmm. There was also the idea that the word neutral had been so used regarding Trump. There was this idea before the conference that he was going to be neutral towards Israel. So I think part of it, we saw a sense of relief among people in the audience that if this guy becomes president, then he's really going to be on our side based on what he's saying. And look, Trump was a politician that night. He was a politician. He did what politicians do when they go to Aipac. He
Yes.
told the crowd what they wanted to hear, which is a very strong pro-Israel message.
Okay. By the way, we had Eli Kohanim in the audience. She was covering it for JBS. When she came on the air, her description was that Trump sort of won the crowd over, and they responded with delight to the yay comment. And we spoke to J.J. Goldberg, whom you know very well from the Jewish Forward, and he used the word magic, David. He said Trump sort of has this ability to cast a magic spell on an audience, and that he's very talented in that way. When you hear, Eli say that he won the audience over, when you hear JJ uses the word magic, does any of that resonate with you?
Yeah, it did. It did. Also, I mean, the crowd is really, really worried about Israel.
Yes.
This is the key thing. When people talk about Aipac moving to the right, I don't see it that way. I think, in a way, the crowd that I saw Monday night, it's not that they were becoming more right-wing or more partisan. I felt they were becoming more like Israel, in the same way that Israel has faced the reality that there's no peace agreement to be made right now, and that the primary thing is to be able to survive in a very nasty neighborhood. I think the crowd that I saw Monday night was more Israeli.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel in any way that the AIPAC constituency, those who come to AIPAC, look, there are 18,000 attendees this year, David, has the makeup of AIPAC changed? Is there, for example, more of an Orthodox cast to AIPAC, a larger Orthodox contingent? What do you feel is responsible for the fact that AIPAC is becoming, ironically you use to say, it's becoming more attuned to or more aligned with or more sympathetic to Israel? Is it because there's a larger Orthodox contingent? What's the makeup from your perspective?
I think it's a reflection of what we're seeing in the whole American community, the Jewish community, and you see the schism evolving between the American Jewish community and the Israeli Jewish community, whereas Israel is more in tune with the reality that it faces every day. The fact that Israel abandoned Gaza and got 15,000 rockets, the fact that Ehud Barak, made a generous peace offer backed by Bill Clinton, and Israel got 1,000 dead in the Second Intifada. The fact that Ehud Olmert made an even more generous offer and got rewarded by the glorifying of terrorism. These kind of events are taken very, very seriously in Israel, a lot more so than they're taken here in America. We don't feel them as deeply. When the bombs fall from Gaza and you take your family into a bomb shelter, all that is a reflection of why the left in Israel has shrunk so much and why the country, people say Israel has moved to the right. I say reality has moved to the right, and Israel just followed. That has not happened in America, except for the ones who have followed. And you're right, in the Orthodox community, especially in the Sephardic community. It has become more Israeli, and I think that's what I saw Monday night. I saw a crowd that became more Israeli, which is, I really, really worry about the existential threats to Israel.
David, very often you and I are at Aipac together. This year we stayed in New York to be able to cover the plenary on Monday live. But when I've been there with you, obviously we see yarmulkes all over the hall. It used to be all at the Washington Convention Center. Now, as you point out, it was both at the Convention Center and the enormous Verizon Center arena. But there were yarmulkes. But I did not feel I was in an Orthodox room. Did you feel, again, that there is a growing Orthodox participation in AIPAC? Or would you say your own sense was it was no different this year than the past few years?
I didn't see a major difference, Mark. What I've noted is that for so many Jews in America, the idea of Jewish values takes precedence over Israel. And this is where the conflict comes up, because at AIPAC, AIPAC is really not designed as an organization to promote Jewish values. AIPAC is designed as an organization to really promote the welfare of the Israel-American relationship. But Jews are Jews, and so many Jews here in America have this luxury of indulging in Jewish values, which is incredibly important. Whereas I think what you see in a pro-Israel organization like AIPAC, that's why you see more of an Israeli attitude, which is that Israel comes first. And that's why people tolerated, somebody like Trump violates so many, lines of basic decency and has done things that are utterly unacceptable. But this sense of caring for Israel goes so deeply among so many pro-Israel people that's why you saw cheering that night. But it was not evidence that they were abandoning Jewish values. It was evidence that this guy might be president one day, and he's saying great things about Israel, and I'm going to cheer him, and that was that.
Okay. So what was your feeling about Lillian Pincus's response, the rebuke of Trump and of the AIPAC attendees who did cheer?
I'm always reluctant to judge people for what they cheer about. I think that gets us into very dicey territory. If I'm going to start monitoring every crowd I go to now at every event and judge people by what they cheer about, that's just a little wrong for me. It's not in the spirit of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. I think it's perfectly okay to criticize and judge an individual and their actions. But this idea of judging a crowd of 18,000, look, I think the president of AIPAC, Marcus, she did what she had to do. My guess is that there were some non-Jews in the audience, and from what I hear, there were some African Americans who were very offended by Trump's comments on President Obama.
I see.
And I think they probably took that into consideration, and they felt they had to make a statement.
You don't feel there were Democrats who were very offended?
Yes, I'm sure there were. I have friends of mine who were very offended, but I just don't get offended that easily, I guess.
Well, first of all...
as much as I'm offended by Donald Trump and so much of what he's done, it's hard for me to build up some resentment towards the crowd on Monday night.
Okay,
I'm trying to.
Okay,
because
but
so
David,
many of my friends have been offended, but I just can't do it.
David,
for me, this is a crowd that really, really, really worries about Israel. They're becoming a little more Israeli, and they realize that there's no more chance for peace right now. And this guy is saying the right things about Israel, and let's cheer it. That's what I saw. I didn't go. It didn't offend me like it has so many people, including Jane Eisner and J.J. Goldberg and my colleague at the Journal, Rob Eshman.
Okay, but David, you agree with Trump. in his criticism of Obama.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Mark.
You agree with Trump in his criticism of Obama.
Well, that's critical, what you just said. We have to remember that Aipac, invested $30 million in a campaign against the Iran deal. Obama was front and center. So many people in that room Monday night, and so many Jews in America think the deal is an existential threat to Israel. And it's a very, very bad deal. And it looks like the facts are proving the skeptics correctly if you look at what's happened in the past few months. So, yes, there is a strong anti-Obama sentiment in the Jewish position that's connected to the Iran nuclear deal.
Yes.
I wouldn't go as far as Trump. Trump, he has a way of getting in trouble by just exaggerating so much. And when you say things like the worst thing to ever happen to Israel, that's just over the top and it's unnecessary. But you'll see a lot of very smart, reasonable people who are very much against the Iran deal, which President Obama championed. So yes, there was strong agreement in the audience at criticism towards Obama, and I think that was reflected in the cheering.
Okay, I agree with you. Incidentally, Ted Cruz comes on and also criticizes the president, and for some reason nobody comments on that, David.
Well, it was very expected from Cruz, but if you recall, there was so much was being made that Donald was not pro-Israel because he was going to be neutral and so forth. So there was that factor. Also, like Goldberg said, there's a magic to Trump because he's so raw. He's so unusual for a politician just by the way he speaks and
Absolutely.
Stuff that people just, it's something you haven't heard before. And he does have an enormous amount of charisma on stage, and I saw it firsthand. But primarily, it was a strong, aggressive, pro-Israel message that moved the crowd.
I'm going to tell you what
They cheered the message. They didn't cheer Trump. They cheered the message.
Okay. I'm going to tell you a criticism I hear of him. I want you to react from me. Earlier on that very day, when Trump came and spoke so effectively at Aipac, earlier in that day, he was involved in a press conference in which he said that he's leaning towards making foreign countries pay for the U.S. defense of a country. And somebody said to him, well, will that also apply to Israel? And he says, I think so. In my mind, it clearly was not this. It was not a thought-out policy. But on the spur of the moment, when asked, should Israel be required to pay the United States back for the defense that costs the U.S. money, Trump's answer was yes. And for many inside the Jewish community, that goes against a very long-standing principle that Israel is America's greatest ally. In my mind, it may be the greatest ally worldwide, not only in the Middle East, and that when the United States spends money to defend Israel, the United States is spending money that is well worth it, and it's in its own interest. So many people were very critical of Donald Trump saying that Israel now has to reimburse the United States for money equivalent to what it spends on defending Israel. None of that was brought up during his speech, and I don't even know how many people in the room even knew that Trump had said this. My own instinct also, David, is that Trump just says things, and it's only later that he tries to figure out exactly where he stands on a policy. That bothers some people. It doesn't seem to bother everyone. I've described the phenomenon to you, David. React to it for me.
Trump is not your typical thoughtful, deliberate person. That's not who he is. He's impulsive. He speaks off the cuff. He speaks from his kishkas. And I think for the Jews who think he's going to be pro-Israel if he makes it to the White House, there's a sense that his kishkas will lead him to support Israel. That the more he finds out about Israel's democracy, about Israel's fairness in its past, about Israel's genuine threats to Israel from its enemies, the more he learns about it, the kishkes will take him towards Israel. That's the thinking. And I think that's why people give him some forgiveness, because they realize he just speaks off the cuff. Sometimes that does get him in trouble.
Yes. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I want a yes or no from you. Do you think Donald Trump is a demagogue?
I don't have enough information on that.
Is he a racist?
I think he's made racist comments.
Is he a racist?
I'm always reluctant to jump from action to defining an identity. He's made racist comments. I know friends of mine who've made racist comments, and I wouldn't call them racist. You know, so I'll just stick to the fact that he has made racist comments.
Okay. What do you feel about the comparison between Trump and Hitler?
I think that's unhelpful, because it's just unhelpful. It's over the top, it's exaggerated, and it doesn't lead to interesting debate.
Okay. What about the criticism that he does not have a coterie of effective, experienced advisors?
That I'm concerned about. I've been doing my research on this, and apparently there's a guy, Schmitz, I think the name is, who's not highly regarded. I'm trying to get a hold of Wally Faris to interview him. I'm concerned about that, Mark.
Okay. So, David,
I'd like to see some real sort of centrist, knowledgeable, reasonable people eventually, if he does make it to the White House, people like Dennis Ross and so forth,
okay,
to keep them on the straight and narrow.
All right, I want to describe one more phenomenon to you, and I want you to react for me. I run into people all the time, Jews, bright, educated, sensitive, good people, Jews, who say to me they're going to vote for Donald Trump. Does that surprise you?
It does surprise me. At the same time, I look at the last 15 years, Mark, and a lot of people see the last 15 years as a total disaster. So we had 8 years with a president who squandered $3 trillion in Iraq on a country that couldn't even say thank you. And then we went to another president who's made America look incredibly weak. And then a lot of people are saying, how much worse can it really get?
Mm-hmm. David, can Donald Trump win the Republican nomination?
I think he will win the Republican nomination, and I think he's got a decent shot at the White House.
You think that he has a decent shot of defeating Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, I do. You know, he's proved us wrong time and time and time again. I think one of the things we saw Monday night is that he's got the ability to clean up his act and to use prepared notes for his speech, which was the first time he's done that. So I think when he gets into the general election, we're probably going to see a lot less of the reckless stuff that we've seen from him. He's going to try to clean up his act, and it'll be a closer fight than we all assume.
Okay, but you know that the Democratic Party will use all of the things he has said during the primary. They'll use that against him. He can't. He will not be able to run away from it, David.
They will. They will. There's no doubt. They will absolutely do it. He's found a way to create this Teflon where when people criticize a lot of his actions toward his life, he'll use it as a positive in the sense that, well, if you think I was too tough of a negotiator or I might have ripped somebody off, well, that's exactly what I'm going to do with China. His compelling message is that he's going to bring millions of jobs back to America. Whether that's true or not, it's a compelling message right now. Whether he can handle all the attacks from the Clinton camp, that's yet to be seen.
Okay. You can tell me you have a constitutional right not to answer this question. Could you see yourself under any circumstance voting for Donald Trump if the only alternative for you was Hillary Clinton?
I might not vote if that's the choice. So
All right.
I haven't made that decision yet.
All right.
But
all right.
yeah, I
You're,
think
but you're a
lot of us-
courageous guy.
a lot
I
of
said
us
that at the top.
are apprehensive
Okay.
about,
And
about
what's
that
your
choice.
David? What's your sense of Ted Cruz?
He's a very slick, ideological, good debater. I just don't see him winning the nomination.
But if he did, would you be happy?
You know, I have not thought it through. Honestly, I have not thought it through. I mean, I consider myself more of an independent than Democrat or Republican. I definitely lean to the right. I lean conservative, but I haven't even considered possibly voting for Ted Cruz because I think Trump's going to get the nomination.
Okay. One last question on AIPAC for you. We're watching on television. I've got Thane Rosenbaum with me. We're anchoring the JBS coverage of Monday afternoon's plenary where we had John Kasich, and then we had Donald Trump. Then Paul Ryan spoke. Then Donald Trump spoke. And then on our telecast, we showed people Hillary Clinton from the morning plenary. But we're watching on television, and the Verizon Center is jam-packed with 18,000 or more people all there with one idea, where they're all there to celebrate and to support the state of Israel. It was very moving to watch it on television, but you were in the room. Was it moving to you? Did it touch you at all to see in some way, this gala spectacle of this entire sports arena filled with Israeli supporters of Israel?
Look, Mark, I have a deep, deep love of Israel that goes through my pores and my every pore in my body. And when I see 18,000 people just cheer for Israel, I found it very moving. I take off my judgmental hat in those situations, and personally, yes, I was very moved. What I felt in the audience was a tremendous love and concern and passion for Israel. That's why I'm so much more forgiving of the crowd because of the fact that they cheered a message that was very protective of Israel and that it might have come from somebody who's crossed lines of decency like Trump. I'm more forgiving of that because what came across more than anything for me was the love of Israel. I didn't feel people were abandoning Jewish values. I just felt for that one night, the love of Israel came first.
David, I love you, and I always love putting you on JBS and having you share your thoughts, your insights, your analysis. You know I will call you often. In the meantime, you be well, and I hope we see each other in the very near future.
Me too. Thank you, Mark.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
The thoughts of David Suissa, publisher, and he also writes for the Jewish Journal of Greater Los Angeles. He always has something important to say. My thanks, as always, to our director, Sloan Copeland, production coordinator, Serge Goldberg, to the associate director of JBS, Dara Golub, and to the producer of Election 2016, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.